Have you ever wandered through the Australian outback and thought, I wonder what would happen if a giant super pig came out of nowhere and ate me? Neither have I, but it's worth asking. And what spurred this question, you say? Why, the movie Boar from 2017, of course. Since this is my first video, I'll give a brief idea of the goal. First off, let's explain the movie, and then we can explain the monster, its origin, and lastly, let's develop a little stat block and discuss how this monster can be translated into the wonderful world of Dungeons and Dragons. This movie's real light on plot. It pretty much boils down to giant pig kills people. We aren't even really given a backstory, but there's a few small hints that we can glean some information from to figure out its origins, and by a few I mean one. The movie opens on a couple driving at night, only to be startled by a bunch of smaller wild boars, and in a panic the one wants to leave, but nope, Mega Boar takes out the car and ends the couple. We then cut to the next morning where we're introduced to the remainder of the cast, and some notable characters being Bruce, Bernie, Debbie, Bart, Oscar, Jack, Blue, Ken. Was it important to really name all of them? No, it was not, but I thought you should know. On a side note, the exchange of dialogue between Ken and Blue is wonderful. Honestly, the writing of the two old friends just like shit talking, magical. We established that Debbie and Bernie are siblings and she's come out with a new family to visit her brother. We are also given the knowledge that Blue and Ken are going camping in the bush that night. Why is that important? Well, because it is. With the exposition dump out of the way, we cut to that night inside of a tent, steamy, hot love making possibly about to happen. And of course, it's interrupted by a noise. Homeboy goes to check it out, and his name's Homeboy because I don't remember what the hell his name is. And of course, his investigation leads to his untimely death, blue balls and all. Boar then attacks the girl in the tent, being respectful not to just thrash the tent. Megaboar knows about tent openings. This unwarranted company leads to the death of our poor girl, blue balls and all. The screaming gets the attention of Ken and Blue, who are hammered and camping in the bush not too far away from these people. As they approach, they manage to get eyes on the boar using the scope of the rifle, and they take a shot at it to scare it off. Investigating the campsite, they see that there are more tents, but 2 bodies are missing, which Ken deduces that they must be out in the bush. Blue heads back to the site to get the truck so they can get help, and unfortunately, he meets his end at the hooves of the boar. Next on the chopping block, there's the 2 mystery people, the couple that had wandered off into the bush. I'm guessing to screw around. You had private tents, assuming that there's no giant killer pig just smashing the tents. We get some POV shots from the boar before it makes a move on the girl, goring her with his tusks. And then homeboy number 2 just kind of panics and runs. Ken hears the screaming, and like the alpha male that he is, he goes running to help. The girl's still alive when he gets there, but she's badly injured. Ken tries to be the ultimate badass and lure the boar away to come back around to get her. He does this, but unfortunately, her life expires. Unfortunately for Ken, the boar catches up with him. But like the badass he and Blue were, he pulls out his old knife. He says he's going to go meet his now deceased wife, and he goes out in honorable combat. On to Act 3. The family is spending some time at the watering hole with their Uncle Bernie. Bernie leaves to go retrieve something he forgot at the car, but the car is taken out by the boar. Bernie survives, suits up for battle, which means getting a rifle and getting a Bowie knife. And this dude is a behemoth himself. He was played by like a UFC fighter, and the guy is like 400 feet tall. This could have literally been just turned into an Australian kaiju movie between him and the pig fighting. Debbie has Bruce and Robert go investigate the loud smash, which they heard, which leads to the first daytime encounter with the boar. Robert pushes Bruce and runs like the little bitch he is, leading to Bruce not getting up and then getting his head removed by the boar. Robert, upon returning to the remaining family, is literally taken out by a boar drive-by. The boar runs by him at like hyper speeds and just takes him out. It's so gratifying. Bernie returns and ushers his sister and the 2 remaining kids to safety across the water. Eventually night comes, and as they hide in a very, very small barn, the family is attacked again, leading to the actual kaiju battle between Bernie and the boar. Sitcom name right there. Bernie eventually loses the battle after being gored in the stomach. Oh, the son, who I forgot to mention, got dragged off, whatever. Eventually, Debbie and her daughter, being the only ones left, set up to try to make a stand against the boar. That's not stopped by them at all. It's actually stopped by Ken's daughter, Sasha, who shows up and hits it with a car. Debbie then finishes the boar off with a shot to the eye as it struggles to stand with a broken front leg, and it's revealed that Bernie and Bart also survive. As they all drive off, the boar walks back on screen. Now listen, that may have been the lightest synopsis you've ever heard, but really, there isn't much going on here. Not to say the movie's bad, because it's totally an excellent movie, but it's a real simple story. Okay, round 2, the monster. It's a wild boar, the end. Okay, naturally we can't leave it at that. Let's try again. It's a giant wild boar. The end. Bye. All right, one more time, because why not, It's a giant diseased undead wild boar. There we go, nailed it. I'm out. But really, I know in the synopsis I didn't really mention anything that indicated that this thing is more than just a giant pig. I saved that specifically for this section. When we first truly see the boar, the first thing we notice naturally is its size. The boar measures in at 12 feet long. This likely tells us that the boar is male, as sexual dimorphism in wild boars leads to the males being 5 to 10% larger than females. Granted, this ain't no normal boar, but let's just go with it. On average, a typical male boar is about 59 inches or 150 centimeters for you metric using folk out there. That's about 5 feet long, meaning the boar is over double the size of its average kin. A boar's diet typically consists of roots and tubers, nuts, berries, leaves, bark, and so on, but they do eat insects, mollusks, and fish, and other animals, as well as scavenge. So it's not out of the question that they would actually eat a person, but in this case, we never really see the boar eating anyone. It just mashes and gores them to death. The boar is also far more intelligent than any of its wilder counterparts, both stalking its prey as well as being stealthy enough to get the jump on them. In its fight with Bernie, the boar actually exhibits direct malice by stomping on him, and it's almost like an alpha move of like, I've beaten you. Now, aside from the sheer size of the creature, it has some other less natural features. We see from a close-up shot that it has exposed bone on its tail. Its flesh is almost melting off in some spots, and it looks very, very sickly. It's also consistently dripping blood from its mouth, which that's not healthy. It has an unnatural resilience, taking gunfire, constant stabbings, being hit by a car, and having part of its face blown off. It just gets back up. With this information, I think it's safe to say that we ain't dealing with no living creature. This be an undead boar. But wait, Thagomaza, you fantastic fool. How'd you come to that conclusion? Well, sit down. Let me enlighten you. Aside from the literal rotting body and supernatural endurance of an already tough animal, let me explain my theory. Earlier in the film, we are shown a company that drills for oil. This is a real in-passing moment. It's never mentioned again, and it feels as though it was a plot thread that was maybe left to the winds. So what does it drilling have to do with a boar being sickly and gigantic? Well, nothing when it comes to being a living mutated boar. But this boar survived fatal wounds that would kill any normal creature. I propose that this boar is a manifestation of the Australian outback protecting itself from the intrusion of oil drilling. I know it's a long shot, but with the evidence we have, it makes sense. Like, just roll with it. It's what it's got to be. So we know what we're dealing with. A giant supernatural force of nature that is a manifestation of the land trying to protect itself. With that behind us, all right, round 3. Making a monster. This one isn't so bad. It's a semi-intelligent supergiant boar that looks like it's rotting. So let's just start with a name. This beast shall be called the Giant Rot Boar. It started with the basic boar template, because why not? It's just a super boar. But we played with its base stats, giving it 18 strength, 10 dexterity, 15 con, 11 intellect, 2 wisdom, and 2 charisma. I don't know. I don't think there's much a giant rotting boar could do to make me like it, so that charisma stat's staying low. It's a large-sized beast with a chaotic neutral alignment. Now, I don't care who you is. If you're hurting the land, the boar is hurting you. It's immune to necrotic damage, and it resists poison and slashing. I mean, Bernie stabs the ever-living shit out of this thing, and it has dark vision up to 60 feet as well. It's immune to exhaustion and frightened. Based on what we see in the movie, the boar never really stops. It's just kind of always going. As for its abilities, it's a boar. It charges. It has charge. I gave it the aggressive ability as well as the regeneration based on the troll's regeneration ability. And finally, undead fortitude because, you know, it's undead. And lastly, it has a tusk attack and a bite attack for its actions. Overall, it's not a crazy monster with a generous challenge rating of 2. But for some early game adventurers, this could be a fun little monster. Using its movement speed and its hit and run tactics will make for an interesting challenge for lower level characters. Of course, the creature can be played with as well. You can tweak its stats, and maybe there's a few smaller boars that are just cannon fodder, or maybe you decide that the boar is just infected with a dangerous virus and has to be stopped before spreading to other livestock or people in a village and cause some form of undead apocalypse or uprising. I don't know. You tell me. How would you use this giant rot boar in your campaign? Tell me in the comments. Is Boar the most original movie out there? No. Razorback came out in the 80s and it's like almost the same thing. Is it an outstanding, ridiculous movie? Yes. God, yes, it is. And I fully recommend grabbing a pizza with some friends and watching this simple but satisfying little gem. And if you'd like to use the giant rot boar in-game, I've left a link in the description below to a stat block for anyone to use. If you like the content, let me know in the comments below. And again, tell me how you would use the giant rot boar.